Hey there, and welcome to Crazy Pepper, the channel where drama sizzles and revenge burns hotter than ever. If you love jaw dropping twists, bold characters, and stories that keep you guessing till the end, you're in the right place. Subscribe and dive into gripping tales of betrayal, karma, and ultimate payback. Get ready for unforgettable moments and satisfying endings, only on Crazy Pepper. Hit that bell and let the drama begin. The crystal vase slipped from my scarred hands like a dying breath, shattering into 1,000 glittering pieces across the marble floor of the Grayson Mansion's kitchen. I stood there, dishwater still dripping from my fingers, watching 300 years of craftsmanship turn into expensive confetti. Well, crap, I muttered under my breath, grabbing a towel to dry my hands. The scars across my palms, thin white lines that looked like someone had drawn a map of broken dreams, caught the light from the chandelier above. I'd had them since birth, some genetic quirk that made my hands look like they'd been through a paper shredder. Mr. Hartman. The voice behind me belonged to Marcus Grayson himself, the billionaire whose charity gala I was working tonight. At 70-something, he still commanded attention like a general reviewing troops. Is everything all right? I turned around, expecting to get fired on the spot. Instead, Grayson was staring at my hands with an expression I couldn't read. His face had gone pale like he'd seen a ghost. Sorry about the vase, Mr. Grayson. I'll pay for it, of course. The words tasted bitter. On my salary as an event staffer and part-time handyman, I'd be eating ramen noodles until I was 60. But Grayson wasn't listening. He stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the scars crisscrossing my palms. Those marks, where did you get them? Born with them, I said, suddenly uncomfortable. Just one of those things, you know. Grayson's hand trembled as he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. The edges were yellowed with age, and the image showed a baby, maybe 6 months old, with tiny hands extended toward the camera. Even in the faded photo, I could see the unmistakable pattern of scars across the infant's palms, identical to mine. What the hell is this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Before Grayson could answer, my wife Vivian appeared in the kitchen doorway. She looked stunning as always. Blonde hair, perfectly styled, wearing a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But there was something in her expression, a tightness around her eyes that I'd been seeing more often lately. Nick, there you are, she said, her voice honey-sweet but with an edge underneath. I've been looking everywhere for you. Grayson quickly pocketed the photograph, but not before I caught him studying my face with the same intensity he'd shown my hands. We'll talk later, Mr. Hartman, he said quietly, then walked past Vivian without another word. The drive home was silent except for the hum of our aging Honda's engine. Vivian stared out the passenger window, her manicured fingers drumming against her purse. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom house in the older part of town. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Or at least I thought it was ours. You were gone a long time tonight, Vivian said as we pulled into our driveway. Had to clean up the kitchen after I broke something. I eliminated the engine and looked at her profile in the dim light from the street lamp. Grayson showed me this weird photograph, a baby with scars just like mine. Vivian's drumming fingers stopped. That's strange. Yeah, strange. I watched her face, but she was already getting out of the car. Inside the house, I headed straight for the shower while Vivian said she was going to unwind with some wine. The hot water felt good against my shoulders, washing away the smell of industrial dishwasher soap and other people's leftover food. When I came out 20 minutes later, toweling my hair dry, I found Vivian's suitcase open on our bed. Half-packed. My stomach dropped like I'd swallowed a stone. Clothes were folded neatly inside, her good clothes, the ones she wore to important meetings. Her jewelry box sat open on the dresser, several pieces already missing. Planning a trip? I called out, trying to keep my voice casual. Just organizing, she called back from the kitchen. Thinking about donating some things I don't wear anymore. But I knew my wife. Vivian never donated anything worth more than $20, and the clothes in that suitcase were her best outfits. I was about to close the suitcase when I noticed her phone on the nightstand, screen still lit up. She must have forgotten it when she went downstairs. I shouldn't have looked. I knew that even as my hand reached for the device, but something in my gut, that same instinct that had kept me alive through a rough childhood in foster care, was screaming that something was wrong. The text messages were right there on the lock screen. No need to even unlock the phone. Oliver, Can't wait to have you all to myself tomorrow night. That hotel room is going to get very messy. Oliver, your husband has no idea what he's losing. His loss, my gain. Oliver, send me another photo like the one from last week. I'm thinking about you right now. The phone slipped from my numb fingers and bounced on the carpet. Oliver. Oliver damn Brandt, who sold luxury cars downtown and thought his crap didn't stink because he drove a Porsche and wore suits that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Oliver, who Vivian had introduced me to at a barbecue last month, is just a friend from work. I picked up the phone with hands that weren't quite steady and scrolled through more messages. Weeks of them. Months. Photos that made my chest feel like someone was standing on it. Plans for romantic getaways. Discussions about how pathetic and boring I was. And then the kicker. Vivian. Don't worry about Nick. Once I'm done with him, he won't have anything left. You and I can start fresh, and he can go back to washing dishes for the rest of his life. The bedroom door creaked, and I looked up to see Vivian standing in the doorway with a glass of wine in her hand. Her eyes went straight to the phone in my hands, and her face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, guilt, calculation, and finally defiance. I can explain, she said. I set the phone carefully back on the nightstand. Can you? Because those messages seem pretty self-explanatory. It's not what you think. Really? Because what I think is that you've been screwing Oliver Brandt for months while planning to leave me with nothing. My voice was calm, which surprised me. Inside, I felt like a nuclear reactor going critical, but outside, I was ice-cold steady. Vivian took a sip of wine, buying time. You don't understand the situation, Nick. We've been growing apart for years. You work these dead-end jobs, you have no ambition, no drive to better yourself. I need more than this. She gestured around our bedroom like it was a prison cell. So you decided to cheat instead of talking to me about it. I decided to find someone who could give me the life I deserve. Her mask was slipping now, revealing something ugly underneath. Do you know what it's like being married to someone who washes dishes at rich people's parties? Do you know how embarrassing it is when people ask what my husband does for a living? I stood up slowly, and something in my movement made her take a step back. You know what, Vivian? You're right. You do deserve more. You deserve exactly what's coming to you. She tried to laugh, but it came out shaky. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done pretending this marriage means anything to you. Pack your bags and get out. You can't throw me out of my own house. Watch me. I moved toward the suitcase, and she rushed forward to block me. You're being ridiculous. You're imagining things. I picked up her phone again and started reading the messages out loud. Her face went red, then white, then red again. Stop it, she hissed. Why? Why? Embarrassed? You weren't embarrassed when you were sending photos of yourself to another man. You weren't embarrassed when you were planning to destroy my life. I kept reading, my voice getting louder with each message. I said, stop it! She lunged for the phone, but I held it out of reach. Here's my favorite, I said, finding the message I'd been looking for. Quote, Nick is so stupid he probably thinks I'm working late when I'm with you. He has no idea that I've been moving money into my own account for months. By the time I leave him, he won't be able to afford a lawyer. Unquote. The color drained from her face completely. Surprise, I said softly. I'm not as stupid as you think. Vivian straightened up, and I watched her transform before my eyes. The guilty, caught-in-the-act expression melted away, replaced by cold calculation. This was the real Vivian, the one I'd been married to for 6 years without ever really knowing. Fine, she said. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. I'll take half of everything we own, including this house. I'll tell everyone that you're an abusive husband who threatened me. I'll make sure you never work another decent job in this town. Is that right? That's right. And Oliver has connections you can't even imagine. By the time we're done with you, you'll be lucky to find work cleaning toilets. I smiled, and something about that smile made her take another step back. You know what your problem is, Vivian? You've never had to fight for anything in your life. Everything's been handed to you, your job, your connections, your pretty little life. You think everyone else is as soft as you are. What's that supposed to mean? I moved closer and she backed up until she hit the wall. I wasn't threatening her. I would never lay a hand on my wife, even one who'd betrayed me like this. But I wanted her to understand something important. It means you picked the wrong man to F with, I said quietly. You want a war? You've got one. But don't come crying to me when you find out what happens to people who underestimate the guy who washes dishes. Vivian's brave facade cracked, and for just a moment I saw fear in her eyes. Then she pushed past me, grabbing her suitcase and purse. "This isn't over," she said from the doorway. "No," I agreed. "It's not." She stormed out, and a few minutes later, I heard her car start and drive away. I sat down on the bed and looked around the room that had been ours for 6 years. The silence was deafening. Then I started planning. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day making lists. Not the kind of lists normal people make, grocery lists or honey-do lists. These were different. Names, addresses, phone numbers, social media accounts, weaknesses, connections, secrets. I'd learned a long time ago that information was the most valuable currency in the world. Growing up in foster care teaches you to pay attention, to notice things other people miss, to remember every slight and every kindness, because you never know when you'll need to call in a favor or settle a score. Vivian thought she knew me, but she'd never bothered to learn about my life before we met. She didn't know about the 3 years I'd spent working as a private investigator's assistant, learning how to find dirt on people who thought they were untouchable. She didn't know about the network of contacts I'd built in service industries across the city. Bartenders, waiters, cleaning staff, security guards, the invisible people who saw everything and remembered everything. She especially didn't know that I'd been suspicious of her behavior for months and had already started gathering information. My first call was to Paige Morrison, who tended bar at Meridian, the upscale restaurant where Vivian liked to take clients. Paige was a friend from way back. We'd grown up in the same neighborhood before my parents died, and I went into the system. She was one of the few people who knew my whole story. "Nick, Jesus, you sound like hell. What's wrong?" "Vivian's been cheating on me. With Oliver Brandt." Silence on the other end, then. "Crap. I'm sorry, man. I mean, I'm not surprised, but I'm sorry." "Not surprised? They've been coming in together for months. Always sit at table 12 in the back corner. Always pay cash. Always act like they're discussing business, but spend most of their time playing footsie under the table." I closed my eyes. Even though I'd seen the text messages, hearing it confirmed still felt like a punch to the gut. "There's more," Paige continued. "Last week I overheard them talking about you. Vivian was telling Oliver how she was going to clean you out in the divorce. Said you were too trusting to protect yourself." "What else did she say?" "That you'd never see it coming because you're just a working-class loser who doesn't understand how the real world works." Paige's voice was tight with anger. I wanted to pour a drink over her head, but I need this job. "Don't worry about it. But Paige, if you happen to overhear anything else, I'd appreciate a heads up. You got it. And Nick, whatever you're planning, be careful. Oliver's not just some rich a-hole. He's got connections to some serious people." After I hung up, I made my second call to Tommy Chen, who ran a small auto repair shop on the south side. Tommy owed me a favor from a few years back when I'd helped him deal with some customers who thought they could intimidate him into free work. Turned out that having a 6'2" former foster kid show up and explain the situation in simple terms was very effective. "Nick, how you been, man?" "Been better, Tommy. I need some information about a car. Silver Porsche 911, license plate VBR 48429. "Oliver Brandt's car?" "Yeah, I know that piece of crap." "What you want to know?" "Everything," Tommy laughed. "Well, for starters, it ain't his. It's a lease, and he's 3 months behind on payments. Porsche Financial's been calling around looking for it. Word is they're going to repo it any day now." "No kidding." "Kidding. Guy brings it in here sometimes for work because he can't afford the dealership prices. Always pays with credit cards, and half the time they get declined. He's leveraged up to his eyeballs trying to keep up appearances." "Anything else?" "Yeah. Last time he was in, he was bragging to one of my guys about some married woman he was screwing. Said she was going to leave her husband, and they were going to live the high life together. Kept showing pictures on his phone." My grip tightened on the receiver. "Pictures? You don't want to know, man. Trust me." After I hung up with Tommy, I sat in my kitchen and stared at the list I'd been making. Vivian and Oliver thought they were so smart, so sophisticated, so much better than the blue-collar guy who washed dishes for a living. They had no idea what they were dealing with. My phone rang, unknown number. "Mr. Hartman, this is Marcus Grayson. I was hoping we could continue our conversation from last night." I'd almost forgotten about the strange encounter in the kitchen. "About the photograph?" "Among other things. Could you come by my office this afternoon? I have some information that might interest you." Grayson's office was on the top floor of the Grayson building downtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the entire city. The man himself looked older in daylight, more fragile, but his eyes were sharp as he gestured for me to sit in a leather chair that probably cost more than my car. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble, "for last night. I'm sure my reaction to your scars was unsettling. That's one word for it." He pulled out the same photograph he'd shown me before, along with several others. These were taken 43 years ago, at St. Mary's Hospital. The baby in the pictures was given up for adoption 3 days after birth. I looked at the photos, my chest getting tight. The baby had the same scars, the same dark hair, even the same stubborn expression I remembered seeing in my own baby pictures. "What are you telling me?" "I'm telling you that I've been looking for my son for over 4 decades. Grayson's voice was quiet, controlled, but I could hear the emotion underneath. "I was young, stupid, and scared. The mother, your mother, was someone I cared about deeply, but I was engaged to someone else. Someone my family had chosen for me. So you abandoned her." I gave her money for the hospital bills and promised to take care of everything, but she disappeared before I could do more. By the time I hired investigators to find her, she'd died in a car accident, and the baby, you, had already been placed in foster care. I stared at the photographs, my mind reeling. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I'm dying." He said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. "Pancreatic cancer. I have maybe 6 months left, and I want to make things right." "Make things right how?" "I want to leave you everything. The company, the foundation, the estate. You're my only child, Nick. My only family." I set the photographs down carefully. "I need time to think about this." "Of course, but there's something else you should know." Grayson leaned forward. "Your wife contacted my office 6 months ago. She said she was doing research for a real estate client and wanted to know about my family history, my personal life. She was very interested in whether I had any children." The pieces clicked into place like tumblers in a lock. She knew. I believe so. I think she's known for quite some time. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning with revelations and implications. Vivian hadn't just married me for love or even for security. She'd married me because she thought I was connected to money, serious money. And when that connection didn't materialize fast enough for her liking, she decided to cut her losses and move on to someone who could give her the lifestyle she wanted immediately. But now the situation had changed. Now there actually was money involved. More money than Vivian had ever dreamed of. And she had no idea. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Nick, this is Oliver. We need to talk. Meet me at Meridian tonight at 8. Come alone." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "See you there?" Meridian was busy for a Thursday night filled with the usual crowd of business executives and real estate agents trying to impress clients with overpriced steaks and $100 bottles of wine. I spotted Oliver immediately. He was sitting at a corner table wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. He looked nervous, which was interesting. "Nick," he stood up as I approached, extending his hand like we were old friends meeting for drinks. I ignored the handshake and sat down across from him. "What do you want, Oliver?" "Look, I know this situation is awkward." "Awkward?" I kept my voice low, but something in my tone made him lean back in his chair. "You've been screwing my wife for months, planning to destroy my life, and you think it's awkward? I want you to know that I never meant for it to happen this way. Vivian and I, we just connected, you know? Sometimes these things just happen between people." I studied his face, the perfectly styled hair, the expensive watch, the manicured fingernails. Everything about him screamed money and privilege, but now that I knew what to look for, I could see the cracks in the facade. The slightly frayed cuffs on his shirt, the way his eyes darted around the restaurant like he was looking for an escape route. "What do you really want, Oliver?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I want to make this easy for everyone. Vivian's going to file for divorce next week. If you don't contest it, if you just sign the papers and walk away quietly, I'll make sure you get enough money to start over somewhere else." "How much money?" $50,000, cash." I almost laughed. $50,000? That's what you think my marriage is worth? It's more than you'd get fighting it in court. Vivian's got a good lawyer, and she's got a documentation of your anger issues. My anger issues? The threatening behavior. The way you intimidated her last night. She's got it all written down, dated, witnesses lined up. You fight this divorce, and you'll end up looking like an abusive husband. No one will hire you after that. I sat back in my chair, genuinely impressed. You two have really thought this through, haven't you? We're trying to be reasonable. Reasonable? I nodded slowly. Okay, Oliver, I'll consider your offer, but I want to ask you something first. What? Do you know why Vivian married me in the first place? He looked confused. Because she loved you, I guess. Before she realized you two weren't compatible. No, Oliver. She married me because she thought I was connected to money. Big money. She spent months researching my background, trying to figure out if I had rich relatives or trust funds or inheritance coming my way. That's ridiculous. Is it? Did you ever wonder why someone like Vivian, beautiful, educated, ambitious, would marry a guy who washes dishes for a living? Did you think it was my sparkling personality? Oliver's confidence was starting to crack. I don't know what you're trying to say. I'm saying that Vivian is very good at finding men who can give her what she wants. The question is, what happens when she finds out you can't actually afford that Porsche you drive? Or that fancy apartment you live in? What happens when she realizes you're just as broke as I am, but with better credit cards? The color drained from Oliver's face. How do you know about your financial situation? Oliver, you've been living beyond your means for years. Your car is about to be repossessed, you're 3 months behind on rent, and your credit cards are maxed out. You're one missed commission away from bankruptcy. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken of a legal notice posted on his apartment building's bulletin board. Eviction notice, dated yesterday. Oliver stared at the photo, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Here's what's going to happen, I said, leaning forward. You're going to go home and tell Vivian that I laughed at your offer. You're going to tell her that I said I'd rather burn everything down than give her a dime. And then you're going to sit back and watch what happens when a woman like Vivian realizes she's hitched her wagon to a sinking ship. I stood up to leave, then turned back. Oh, and Oliver, stay away from my wife. She's about to learn some hard lessons about loyalty, and I'd hate for you to get caught in the crossfire. As I walked out of the restaurant, I could feel Oliver's eyes on my back. Let him stew on that for a while. By tomorrow, Vivian would know that her carefully laid plans were falling apart, and she'd have to decide whether to cut and run or double down on a losing bet. Either way, the real fun was just getting started. Vivian called me at 6 in the morning, her voice shrill with panic. What did you say to Oliver last night? I was already awake, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and a notebook full of plans. Good morning to you too, dear. I said a lot of things to Oliver. You'll have to be more specific. He's not answering his phone. He was supposed to pick me up for breakfast, but he never showed. His landlord called me looking for him because apparently he's being evicted. Huh, that's weird. Don't play dumb with me, Nick. What did you do? I had a conversation with your boyfriend about the reality of his financial situation. Turns out Prince Charming is broke as a joke. Did you know his Porsche is about to be repossessed? Silence on the other end of the line. Vivian, you still there? You're lying. Am I? Why don't you call Porsche Financial and ask them? The number is 1-800-PORSCHE. Tell them you're calling about vehicle VBR 4409. I could hear her breathing getting faster. This doesn't change anything. I'm still leaving you and I'm still taking half of everything. Sure you are. By the way, have you found a new place to live yet? Because I'm pretty sure Oliver's apartment isn't going to work out. She hung up on me. 2 hours later, my phone rang again. This time, it was Paige. Nick, you need to know what just happened. Vivian came into the restaurant about an hour ago looking for Oliver. When I told her he wasn't here, she started making a scene, demanding to know if he'd been in with another woman, accusing me of covering for him. What did you tell her? I told her the truth, that Oliver was in here yesterday afternoon with some blonde I'd never seen before. They were all over each other, and he paid their bill with 3 different credit cards, because the first 2 got declined. I grinned. You're an angel, Paige. It gets better. After Vivian left, I called my friend Jessica, who works at the bank downtown. Turns out Oliver tried to get a loan yesterday to cover his rent, but his credit is so bad they wouldn't even consider it. He's been kiting checks for months. Kiting checks? Writing checks from one account to cover overdrafts in another account. It's basically fraud, and the bank's getting ready to file charges. This was better than I'd hoped. Oliver wasn't just broke, he was about to be arrested. My next call was to Marcus Grayson. Mr. Grayson, it's Nick Hartman. I've been thinking about what you told me yesterday, and I'd like to know more about my mother, about what happened back then, but I need you to keep this information private for now. There are some things I need to take care of first. Of course, but Nick, there's something else you should know. I've been having you watched for the past few months. Watched? Discreetly. I wanted to know what kind of man you'd become before I approached you. I know about your wife's affair, about her plans to leave you. I also know that she's been trying to find information about my family for quite some time. How much do you know? Everything. And I want to help you make sure she doesn't profit from her deception. What did you have in mind? Why don't you come by the house tonight? I have some ideas. The Grayson mansion looked different in daylight. Less imposing, more like an old man's refuge than a billionaire's fortress. Marcus met me at the door himself, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt that made him look like somebody's grandfather. I've been thinking about your situation all day, he said as he led me into his study. Your wife is clearly a gold digger who targeted you because she suspected you might be connected to wealth. The question is, how do we use that against her? I'm listening. What if she found out that her suspicions were correct? That you really are about to inherit a fortune? She'd try to stop the divorce. Exactly. She'd fight to stay married to you, which would give you leverage to destroy her on your terms rather than hers. I thought about it. That could work, but how do we make sure she finds out? Marcus smiled. Leave that to me. The next morning, I woke up to find 17 missed calls from Vivian. When I finally called her back, she was practically hyperventilating. Nick, we need to talk, right now. About what? About Marcus Grayson. About why his lawyer called me this morning asking questions about our marriage. Hook, line, and sinker. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. His lawyer said something about updating estate documents and needing to verify your marital status. Nick, what the hell is going on? Maybe you should ask Mr. Grayson yourself. I tried. His office said he's not taking calls, but they scheduled a meeting with both of us for tomorrow afternoon. Nick, please? If there's something I should know, there's a lot you should know, Vivian. But you made it pretty clear that you weren't interested in being part of my life anymore. I made a mistake. Oliver and I, it's over. He's been lying to me about everything, his money, his job, everything. I want to come home. Do you? Or do you want to come back because you think there's money involved now? That's not fair, isn't it? You were ready to destroy me a week ago. Now suddenly you want to work things out. What changed, Vivian? I realized I love you. You realized you love my potential inheritance. That's not true. We'll see. Come to the meeting tomorrow. We'll all sit down together and figure this out. That evening, I met with Marcus to plan our strategy. She'll try to manipulate you, he warned. She'll cry. She'll apologize. She'll promise to be a better wife. Don't fall for it. I won't. But I want her to think she's winning, at least at first. Why? Because I want her to commit fully to trying to save this marriage. I want her to burn every bridge with Oliver, to humiliate herself trying to win me back. And then when she thinks she's succeeded, I want to pull the rug out from under her. Marcus studied my face. You're angrier than I thought. She didn't just cheat on me. She planned to destroy my life and laugh about it. She thought I was too stupid to fight back. I met his eyes. I want her to learn exactly how wrong she was. The meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock at Marcus's office. I arrived early and found him waiting with a man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as Robert Chen, Marcus's attorney. Everything's arranged, Robert said. The documents are ready, the story is consistent, and we've prepared for every question she might ask. Vivian arrived exactly on time, wearing a conservative blue dress and carrying a briefcase like she was attending a business meeting. She'd done something different with her hair, softer, more feminine, and her makeup was subtle, designed to make her look vulnerable and trustworthy. Grayson, she said, shaking his hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Thank you so much for meeting with us. Mrs. Hartman, please, sit down. Robert opened a folder and pulled out several documents. Mrs. Hartman, we've asked you here because your husband is about to inherit a substantial estate, and we need to ensure that all legal documents reflect his current marital status. Vivian's eyes lit up, but she tried to hide it. Inherit? Mr. Grayson has recently discovered that Nick is his biological son, Robert continued. We're in the process of updating his will to reflect this relationship. How substantial are we talking about? Vivian asked, abandoning any pretense of subtlety. The estate is valued at approximately $400 million, Robert said calmly. Vivian's face went white, then red, then white again. She turned to look at me, and I could practically see the dollar signs in her eyes. Nick, why didn't you tell me? I just found out myself, and given the circumstances of our marriage lately, I wasn't sure it mattered. Of course it matters. We're married. We're a team. Are we? Because last week you were planning to take half of everything I owned and leave me with nothing. I was confused. I was scared about our future, about money, about whether we could make it work, but this changes everything. Does it? Yes, Nick, I love you. I've always loved you. Oliver was just a mistake. A stupid, terrible mistake that I regret every day. Marcus and Robert exchanged glances. This was going exactly as we'd planned. Mrs. Hartman, Marcus said, I have to ask, did you know about Nick's parentage before today? No, of course not. How would I know something like that? You contacted my office 6 months ago asking questions about my family. Vivian's face flushed. That was for a client. A real estate client who was interested in the history of some properties you owned. What was the client's name? I don't remember. It was months ago. You don't remember the name of a client who asked you to research a billionaire's family history? It wasn't important. It was just background research. Robert made a note in his file. Mrs. Hartman, I have to inform you that if you were aware of Mr. Grayson's relationship to your husband before today, and if you use that information to influence your marriage in any way, there could be legal implications. What kind of legal implications? Fraud. Conspiracy? Depending on the circumstances, we might be looking at criminal charges. Vivian's composure finally cracked. I didn't do anything illegal. I married Nick because I loved him. Then why were you planning to divorce him last week? I asked. Because I thought we were incompatible. Because I thought we wanted different things out of life. Because you thought I was poor. That's not true, isn't it? You told Oliver that I was a working-class loser who would never amount to anything. You planned to take half of everything I owned and leave me with nothing. You called me stupid and pathetic. I never said those things. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Vivian's voice filled the room, clear as day. Nick is so stupid he probably thinks I'm working late when I'm with you. He has no idea that I've been moving money into my own account for months. The recording continued for several minutes, playing back conversation after conversation between Vivian and Oliver. Her face went from red to white to green as she listened to her own words. Where did you get that? Oliver's been recording your conversations for weeks. Insurance, he called it, in case you tried to screw him over the way you screwed me. That's illegal. Actually, it's not, Robert said. This state has one-party consent laws for recording conversations. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's perfectly legal. Vivian looked around the room like a trapped animal. This is all a misunderstanding. Nick, please. We can work this out. I'll do anything to make this right. Anything? Anything. Sign a post-nuptial agreement, giving up any claim to my inheritance. What? You heard me. If you really love me, if this really isn't about money, then you won't mind signing a legal document stating that you have no claim to any inheritance I might receive. But we're married. What's yours is mine. Not anymore. Vivian looked at Marcus, then at Robert, then back at me. I need time to think about this. You have until tomorrow, I said. Sign the agreement or I file for divorce and use these recordings to make sure you don't get a penny. You can't do this to me. Watch me. As we left the office, Vivian grabbed my arm. Nick, please, don't do this. We can work it out. We can go to counseling. We can start over. You're right, I said. We can start over. You can start over with nothing, just like you planned to leave me with. I'm your wife. No, I said, pulling my arm free. You're a stranger who's been living in my house, spending my money and planning to destroy my life. But don't worry, Vivian. You're about to get exactly what you deserve. As I walked away, I could hear her calling my name, her voice getting more desperate with each step I took. But I didn't look back. The game was just getting started, and I was finally holding all the cards. Vivian didn't sign the post-nuptial agreement. Instead, she hired a lawyer, a shark named Patricia Morse, who specialized in high-asset divorces. Within 48 hours, I was served with papers claiming that I had hidden assets, that our marriage had been based on fraud, and that Vivian deserved half of everything, including any inheritance I might receive. The papers also included a restraining order, claiming that I had threatened and intimidated her. According to the filing, I was a dangerous man with anger issues who had become violent when confronted about my deceptive behavior. I read through the documents in my kitchen, drinking coffee and making notes. Vivian was playing hardball, just like she'd threatened. But she was also making a crucial mistake. She was assuming that I would react emotionally, that I would get angry and do something stupid that would give her more ammunition. She didn't know that I'd been planning for this moment since the night I found those text messages. My phone rang. Marcus Grayson. I saw the papers, he said without preamble. She's going after everything. Let her try. Nick, you need to understand something. Even with the recordings, even with proof of her infidelity, she could still get a substantial settlement. Divorce law in this state favors equal distribution of assets. An inheritance can be considered marital property under certain circumstances. Not if there's no inheritance to fight over. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not accepting it. Silence on the other end of the line. Marcus, you still there? You're not accepting the inheritance? Not yet. Not until this divorce is final and Vivian gets exactly what she deserves. But Nick, trust me, I have a plan. The plan required perfect timing and the cooperation of several people who had their own reasons for wanting to see Vivian and Oliver brought down. Over the next week, I made calls, arranged meetings, and set pieces in motion that would culminate in a very public reckoning. My first stop was Tommy Chen's auto shop, where Oliver's Porsche was currently sitting in the impound lot behind the building. Repo man came yesterday, Tommy told me with a grin. Oliver tried to hide the car at his girlfriend's place, but they tracked it down. He owes 18 months of payments plus fees. They're going to auction it off next week. What about Oliver? Word is, he's been staying at a motel out by the highway, lost his apartment, lost his car, lost his job at the dealership when they found out about the check kiting. Dude's living off credit cards and whatever cash he can scrape together. Perfect. My next stop was Meridian, where Paige had been keeping tabs on Vivian's movements. She's been coming in every day this week, Paige reported. Always alone, always ordering the cheapest thing on the menu, always asking if I've seen Oliver. Yesterday, she tried to get me to call him for her because he's not answering her calls. Did you? Hell no. But I did overhear her on the phone with her lawyer. Sounds like the legal bills are adding up fast, and she's starting to panic about money. How much is she spending on the divorce? From what I could hear, she's already dropped 20 grand on attorney fees, and that's just the beginning. Her lawyer wants another 30,000 up front before they go to trial. I smiled. Vivian was burning through her savings to fight for an inheritance that didn't legally exist yet. Every day this dragged on. She was getting deeper in debt while I was getting stronger. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to meet. Tonight. 9 p.m., parking garage on 5th Street, level 3. Come alone. I stared at the message, trying to figure out who would want to meet me in a parking garage. Then it hit me. Oliver. The parking garage was mostly empty at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night. I found Oliver waiting by his rental car. A beat-up Honda that was a far cry from the Porsche he used to drive. He looked like hell. Unshaven. Wearing wrinkled clothes. Dark circles under his eyes. Nick, thanks for coming. What do you want, Oliver? I want to make a deal. I'm listening. Vivian's lost her mind. She's convinced that you're hiding millions of dollars, and she's spending everything she has trying to prove it. She's already blown through her savings, and now she's borrowing money to pay her lawyer. So I know the truth. I know there's no inheritance, at least not yet, and I know you're playing some kind of long game to destroy her. I kept my face neutral. What makes you think that? Because you're not stupid despite what she thinks. You're smart, you're patient, and you're pissed off. You're letting her hang herself with her own greed. Even if that were true, why would you care? I thought you two were in love. Oliver laughed bitterly. Love? She dumped me the second she thought you might be rich. Told me I was a temporary distraction and that she needed to focus on her marriage. When I reminded her that she'd been planning to leave you, she said plans change. Ouch. Yeah. Ouch. So now I'm broke, unemployed, and living in a motel while she's spending every penny she has trying to take your money. Money that doesn't even exist. What kind of deal are you proposing? I help you destroy her, and you help me get back on my feet. I've got recordings, photos, documentation of everything we planned together. I can testify about her real motives, about how she targeted you because she thought you had money. Why would I need your help? I'm doing fine on my own. Because she's planning something big, something that could actually work. That got my attention. What kind of something? She's found a way to prove that you knew about the inheritance before you married her. She's going to claim that you're the one who committed fraud, that you tricked her into marrying you under false pretenses. How could she prove that? She hired a private investigator to dig into your past. He found records of the payments Marcus Grayson made to your mother's hospital bills. She's going to argue that your mother told you about your real father before she died and that you've been planning this con for years. I felt a chill run down my spine. She can't prove that, can she? You worked for a private investigator for 3 years. You had the skills and resources to track down your biological father. And you just happened to end up working at his charity gala? That's a hell of a coincidence. It was a coincidence. I believe you. But will a judge? I stared at Oliver, realizing that Vivian was smarter than I'd given her credit for. She was turning my own strategy against me, using my past against me, trying to paint me as the manipulator instead of the sufferer. What do you want in return for your help? $50,000, cash, and a reference for a new job. I don't have $50,000. You will, once you accept that inheritance. I thought about it. Oliver was offering to betray the woman he'd claimed to love in exchange for money. It was exactly the kind of mercenary behavior I'd expect from someone like him. But it was also exactly what I needed to counter Vivian's new strategy. Deal, I said. But I want everything. Every recording, every photo, every document. And I want you to testify under oath about her real motives. Done. We shook hands in the empty parking garage. Two men who had both been betrayed by the same woman, now united in our desire for revenge. There's one more thing, Oliver said as we walked back to our cars. Vivian's planning to make this very public. She's already talked to a reporter from the Herald about doing a story on gold-digging husbands and how women need to protect themselves from men who hide their wealth. She's going to the press? Next week, she wants to paint you as a con man who tricked her into marriage, then tried to steal an inheritance that rightfully belongs to both of you. I smiled grimly. Let her try. By the time I'm done, the only story the press will want to write is about a cheating wife who got exactly what she deserved. As I drove home, I called Marcus and told him about Oliver's warning. She's more dangerous than we thought, he said. If she can convince a judge that you knew about the inheritance all along, she could claim fraud and go after everything. Then we need to move faster. How quickly can you make the inheritance official? The paperwork could be finalized tomorrow. But Nick, once it's official, there's no going back. You'll be worth $400 million, and she'll have a legal claim to half of it unless we can prove fraud on her part. We can prove it. Oliver's going to help us. You trust him? I trust his greed. He wants money, and I'm the only one who can give it to him now that Vivian's thrown him away. And if he betrays you too, then I'll destroy him the same way I'm going to destroy her. The next morning, I woke up to find my picture on the front page of the Herald. The headline read, "Local Woman Fights Husband's Secret Fortune." The article, written by a reporter named Jennifer Walsh, painted Vivian as a sufferer of marital fraud and me as a calculating con man who had hidden my wealth to avoid sharing it with my wife. The article included quotes from Vivian's lawyer, details about the inheritance, and speculation about how long I had known about my relationship to Marcus Grayson. It also mentioned that Vivian was seeking justice for women everywhere who have been deceived by dishonest husbands. I read the article twice, then called Marcus. "Did you see the paper?" "I saw it. My phone's been ringing all morning. Reporters, lawyers, old business associates." This is exactly what we were trying to avoid. "No," I said, "and this is exactly what we needed." "What do you mean?" "Vivian just made this a public fight. She's betting everything on her ability to convince people that I'm the villain in this story. But she's also given me a platform to tell my side. What are you planning?" "I'm planning to give the people what they want, a show. And by the time it's over, everyone in this city will know exactly who Vivian really is." I spent the rest of the day making calls and setting up interviews and preparing for the media war that Vivian had just declared. She wanted to play this game in public? Fine. But she was about to learn that I was much better at it than she was. The first interview was scheduled for that evening with Channel 7 News. The reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Lisa Park, met me at a coffee shop downtown with a camera crew and a list of questions that Vivian had obviously helped prepare. "Mr. Hartman, your wife claims that you've been hiding a $400 million inheritance throughout your marriage. Is that true?" "No, it's not true. I found out about my relationship to Marcus Grayson less than 2 weeks ago, and I haven't accepted any inheritance." "But you did work at Mr. Grayson's charity gala. Isn't that a strange coincidence?" "I work a lot of events in this city. It's how I make a living. I had no idea who Marcus Grayson was beyond the fact that he was wealthy." "Your wife says you've been planning this deception for years." "My wife has been having an affair for months while planning to leave me with nothing. She's also been researching Marcus Grayson's family history Since before we were married. If anyone's been planning a deception, it's her. Lisa's eyebrows went up. You're saying your wife targeted you because she thought you were connected to wealth? I'm saying my wife is a gold digger who made a very bad bet. The interview aired that night, and by morning the story had completely flipped. Now the headlines read, Cheating Wife's Gold-Digging Scheme Exposed, and Local Man Fights Back Against Manipulative Spouse. Vivian called me at 6 a.m., screaming, You fool! You lying, manipulative fool! Good morning, Vivian. I see you caught the news. You're destroying my reputation. I'm telling the truth. If that destroys your reputation, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to cheat on me and steal my money. I'm going to sue you for defamation. With what money? Last I heard, you'd spent your savings on lawyer fees trying to steal an inheritance that doesn't belong to you. She hung up on me, but I wasn't done. Over the next 3 days, I gave interviews to every news outlet in the city, appeared on 2 radio shows, and sat down with a blogger who specialized in exposing women who weaponize divorce. Each time I told the same story. I was a working-class guy who had been betrayed by a wife who married me for money that didn't exist. And each time, I had more evidence to back up my claims. Oliver had come through with recordings, photos, and documents that painted a devastating picture of Vivian's real character. Text messages where she mocked me to her friends. Photos of her and Oliver together while she was still living in our house. Bank records showing how she'd been moving money into secret accounts. By Friday, public opinion had turned completely against her. The Herald ran a follow-up article titled, The Woman Who Cried Fraud, and the comments section was brutal. People were calling her everything from a gold digger to a sociopath. But I wasn't done yet. The best part was still to come. Saturday morning, I called a press conference. I rented the ballroom at the Marriott downtown, the same hotel where Vivian had been planning to host her real estate company's annual awards dinner the following week. I sent invitations to every news outlet in the city, every blogger who had covered the story, and every social media influencer who had an opinion about marriage, divorce, and money. I also sent a special invitation to Vivian herself. The ballroom was packed. Reporters, cameras, curious onlookers who had been following the story. Marcus Grayson sat in the front row, wearing a dark suit and a grim expression. Oliver sat 3 rows back, looking nervous but determined. And there in the back of the room, trying to hide behind a pillar, was Vivian. I walked to the podium and looked out at the crowd. For a moment, I felt like I was back in foster care, standing in front of a room full of strangers who were deciding my fate. But this time, I was the one in control. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Over the past week, there's been a lot of speculation about my marriage, my wife, and my relationship to Marcus Grayson. Today, I want to set the record straight. I pulled out a folder full of documents and set it on the podium. First, let me address the question of when I learned about my parentage. I have here a sworn affidavit from Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, who delivered me at St. Mary's Hospital 43 years ago. She confirms that my birth mother never knew the identity of my father and that she died without ever revealing it to anyone. I held up the document so the cameras could see it. I also have hospital records showing that my mother was unconscious for the last 3 days of her life, following a car accident. She couldn't have told me anything about my father because she was in a coma. Murmurs from the crowd. I could see Vivian shifting uncomfortably behind her pillar. Second, I want to address my wife's claim that I hid assets from her. The truth is I haven't accepted any inheritance from Marcus Grayson. In fact, until this moment, there was no inheritance to accept. I turned to Marcus, who stood up and walked to the podium. As of this morning, Marcus said, I have officially adopted Nick Hartman as my son and heir. The paperwork was filed with the court at 9 a.m., making this inheritance legally binding for the first time. The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and I could see Vivian's face go white, even from across the room. Marcus handed me a folder. Nick, this represents your inheritance. $400 million in assets, including real estate, investments, and business interests. I took the folder and held it up for everyone to see. Then I did something that no one expected. I tore it in half. The room went silent. I'm not accepting it, I said into the stunned quiet. Not yet. Marcus started, but I held up my hand. I want everyone to understand something. This was never about money. This was about justice. This was about showing the world what happens when someone tries to destroy an innocent person for their own greed. I pulled out another folder, this one full of Oliver's evidence. I have here recordings of my wife planning to clean me out in our divorce. I have photos of her with her lover, taken while she was still living in our house and claiming to love me. I have bank records showing how she moved money into secret accounts while planning to leave me with nothing. I started reading from the transcripts, and with each quote, the crowd's reaction grew more hostile. By the time I finished, people were booing and hissing every time I mentioned Vivian's name. But here's the thing, I said, raising my voice over the noise. Even after all of this, even after she cheated on me and lied to me and tried to destroy my life, I'm not going to take her money. I pulled out a legal document and held it up. This is a divorce settlement that I'm offering to my wife. She gets half of everything we acquired during our marriage. The house, the cars, the savings accounts, everything. All she has to do is sign it. The crowd was confused now. This wasn't the revenge story they'd been expecting. The catch, I continued, is that she has to sign it right now in front of all of you. And she has to apologize. Not to me, I don't care about her apology. She has to apologize to every woman in this room who has ever been faithful to her husband. She has to apologize for making it harder for people to trust each other. She has to apologize for weaponizing divorce and using false accusations to try to destroy an innocent man. I looked directly at Vivian, who was now fully visible as people had turned to stare at her. If she signs a settlement and makes that apology, she walks away with half of everything, and I accept my inheritance. If she doesn't, I fight this divorce for the next 5 years while she goes deeper and deeper into debt-paying lawyer fees to chase money that will never be hers. The crowd turned to look at Vivian, and I could see her calculating. Half of our marital assets wasn't much, maybe $50,000 total. But it was better than the nothing she would get if this dragged on for years. "Vivian," I called out, "what's it gonna be?" She stood there for a long moment, her face cycling through emotions. Anger, humiliation, desperation, and finally, defeat. Then she started walking toward the front of the room. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea, and I could hear people whispering as she passed. When she reached the podium, she looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past week. "I'll sign," she said quietly. "Not yet. First, the apology." She took the microphone with shaking hands and looked out at the crowd. I want to apologize to the women here who have been faithful wives. I made choices that I regret, and I used the legal system in ways that were wrong. I'm sorry." It wasn't much of an apology, but it was enough. I handed her the settlement papers and a pen. She signed them without reading them, her hand shaking so badly she could barely write her name. "Congratulations, Vivian," I said as she handed the papers back. "You're officially divorced and officially broke." She looked up at me with hatred in her eyes. "This isn't over." "Yes," I said, "it is." As she walked out of the ballroom, the crowd actually applauded. Not for her, for me. For the show I'd put on, for the justice I'd delivered, for the way I'd turned the tables on someone who had tried to destroy me. But I wasn't done yet. I turned back to Marcus and held out my hand. "Now, I'll take that inheritance." He smiled and handed me a new folder. "Welcome to the family, son." The crowd erupted again, but I held up my hand for quiet. "There's one more thing," I said. "Oliver Brandt, would you please come up here?" Oliver looked terrified, but he made his way to the front of the room. Oliver here helped me gather evidence against my ex-wife. He provided recordings, photographs, and testimony that exposed her real character. He did this even though he had been involved with her, even though it meant betraying someone he claimed to love. I pulled out a check and handed it to him. "This is your payment, $50,000 as promised." Oliver took the check with trembling hands. "But Oliver," I continued, "I want everyone here to understand what kind of man you are. You recorded private conversations with a woman you claimed to love. You betrayed her the moment it became profitable to do so. You're exactly the kind of person who would sell out anyone for the right price." I turned to the crowd. "So if anyone here is thinking about doing business with Oliver Brandt, or dating him, or trusting him in any way, just remember, he's a man who will betray anyone for money." Oliver's face went red, then white. He'd gotten his money, but I'd also destroyed any chance he had of rebuilding his reputation in the city. "You can go now," I told him. As Oliver slunk out of the ballroom, I turned back to the crowd for my closing statement. "I want everyone to remember this story," I said. "Remember what happens when someone underestimates the guy who washes dishes. Remember what happens when someone tries to destroy an innocent person for their own greed. And remember that justice doesn't always come from the courts or the police. Sometimes it comes from ordinary people who refuse to be sufferers. I looked directly into the main camera. Vivian thought I was too stupid to fight back. She thought I was too weak to defend myself. She thought she could destroy my life and walk away rich. She was wrong about all of it. I paused, letting the words sink in. I'm not the sufferer in this story anymore. I'm the guy who won. And if anyone else out there is thinking about trying to destroy someone they think is beneath them, just remember, you never know who you're really dealing with. I stepped away from the podium as the crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and people pressed forward to shake my hand. But I was already walking toward the exit, toward my new life as a very wealthy man who had just delivered the most public, devastating revenge in the city's history. As I reached the door, I turned back for one last look at the ballroom where I'd just destroyed two people who had tried to destroy me. The scars on my hands caught the light from the chandeliers, and I smiled. Some scars never heal, but sometimes that's exactly what makes you stronger.